This trip to Ireland was 3 years in the making. We got delayed twice because of COVID, and we were so excited that it was actually happening this year. The Finnegan family was on their way to Ireland. This was our first international trip in quite a few years, and our first time to Ireland. Since we were going across the Atlantic, we were on the large 787 Dreamliner, and we normally fly budget airlines, so it was nice to have this large fold-out tray, in-seat entertainment with lots of movies and TV. It made this overnight flight a little bit more enjoyable. We were leaving Philadelphia at just about 9 p.m., and we were going to be flying overnight and landing in Dublin in the morning. So I brought some things to help me survive, like my inflatable neck pillow from Sea to Summit. Then I have this new gear, my eye pillow from Manta Sleep with these eye cups, because I was going to try my very hardest to sleep, even though I'm really bad at sleeping on airplanes. And my new favorite piece of gear, this down blanket that packs into a small carrier.
So don't let the weight of the world slow you down. And if you search for the meaning of life, it won't be found. So take your insecurities and leave them all behind. Let's learn to make the most of our time.
One of the great things about flying at night is you get these amazing views of the city below. In our group, it was me, Patrick, Patrick's dad, Jim, and Patrick's sister, Megan. And we were on this trip with quite a few other people who belong to the Cara Irish Society. We joined a few years ago with hopes of going on our first trip to Ireland. Luckily, during this flight, we were fed quite well. I had some pasta with meat sauce, Patrick had some chicken, and as we approached Ireland, it was around 2:30 our time when they gave us a snack of yogurt. So with the food coming frequently, I only got a little bit of sleep, but I really don't sleep well on planes anyway, especially when I'm this excited about doing something so special. We've been on flights with some very strange schedules before, but this was our first true overnight flight with a big time change. So it's a 5-hour difference between Philadelphia and Dublin. So by this time we really needed some coffee. But as the sun started to come up over the horizon and we got closer to Ireland, the excitement was building. I packed up my inflatable neck pillow and I folded up my new down blanket into its carrying case. I decided to bring this at the last minute, thinking that I might like to have a blanket on the plane. I ended up using this every single day of the trip, and I'm so glad I brought it. We started our descent, and this was where we got our first glimpse of Ireland. It's so neat to get the aerial view. I really think that pilots must get to see some of the most beautiful sights in the whole world. I'm so glad I had a window seat and that we were landing during daylight so that you could actually look down and see the green patchwork that you kind of imagine Ireland to look like.
You know, you're in Ireland and you spot a castle from the air.
Welcome to Dublin.
Thank you.
As we deplaned, I remember thinking I felt better than I expected, considering it was an overnight flight and it was now very early in the morning at home. But that was because of the excitement of being in a new place, and it also helped that the sun was up, so it felt like we were supposed to be awake. We started to make our way through the airport to meet our bus driver. This was just the beginning of the day. We had quite a lot to go. We met our bus driver, Joe. We got our bus assignment, and we made the walk from the airport out to the bus parking. It is 4:30 our time and 10:30 here, and I actually feel surprisingly good. How do you feel?
Okay.
Okay. I think we slept for maybe an hour at most. But you just kind of use the excitement, and at least the sun is up. That helps. This is our first time doing a group bus trip, and to be honest, I really wasn't sure how we were going to like it. This is really different from our typical mode of travel, but I was pleasantly surprised by the bus. Lots of windows, you can see everything around you, so you get these great views of the Irish countryside, and the seats were very comfortable. We had a bathroom on the bus, so you didn't have to worry about how frequently they were going to stop, and it was really nice to not have to worry about where we were going. I'm usually the trip planner, and while Patrick drives, I have to navigate, and it's really a constant process of figuring things out and thinking. Where with this trip, we just got to sit back and relax because we knew that Joe, the bus driver, was going to get us exactly where we needed to go. And we were quite happy about that because in Ireland, they drive on the left side of the road, or what Joe, our bus driver, said is the correct side of the road. And from watching the traffic patterns, I don't think I would be able to drive there myself. So I was very happy to be in the bus. After getting picked up at Dublin International Airport, we were making our way north to a city along the coast for our breakfast stop. So the day was starting. We were going for it, even though we didn't have much sleep. But it was great to look out the windows and start to get our first views of what Ireland looks like. And I was pleasantly surprised by all of the greenery. And it was a nice treat to make our way over to the Irish Sea. The spot that we stopped for breakfast had a great view of the water. After driving through some picturesque countryside and adorable little towns, we arrived at the Glide Inn, which was our breakfast spot. They have a bar in the front, which is very old, and in the back there's a beautiful room overlooking the Irish Sea, and we got to have our first of many Irish breakfasts, and it was quite enjoyable. I love trying new food when we are traveling, so that's really a big part of the fun. Oh, are you? That's neat. Tell him to follow our channel.
Yeah.
The owner was very friendly, and he came over and he was asking about our little camera. I had the DJI sitting on the table.
About to go country Irish.
Yes. He thought about it for a moment and then decided to climb down over the rocks and walk down to the water so that he could actually put his hand in the Irish Sea. And no surprise here, it was very cold. After a great breakfast, we headed back onto the bus. We were heading up north toward the town of Derry.
Eric's place.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, look at this is cute. Yeah, this is nice.
They're all racing, like weighing the salmon. So when the salmon came in, we'd have to wait here and we'd put that there so you'd know. When you get them in plastic, and you'd roll them. Yeah. So when I make
It smells like Lancaster and then the a little bit with the cows.
The farmy
Yeah,
smell.
farmy smell.
Yeah.
That'll do.
Find your car.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
As we got back onto the bus, the sun really came out, and this brought out the beautiful green color of the fields. It really is amazing how green it is here. And there are quite a lot of sheep in these little pastures that are divided by rock walls and hedge lines. We get to see a lot of that on this trip. We have a lot to show you from Ireland, so make sure that you are subscribed. Hit the notification bell so that you will know as soon as the next video comes out, so that you can see the castles and the coastline, the Giant's Causeway, the gin tour, and all the other great things that we got to do with our time in Ireland. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you in the next one. As we got our trip in Ireland started, we were making our way from Dublin up north to the city of Derry. And Northern Ireland is absolutely beautiful. The green rolling hills are actually as green as you think they are.
So it's a good sign that there's no more checkpoints anyhow. Checkpoints, you know, before they'd stop. Yeah, they'd stop you and they'd search. Yeah, and they'd take out your bags and, you know, they'd search all the bags and search all the people and everything like that. That's all gone, thankfully.
For nearly 30 years, there was a conflict going on in the north of Ireland called the Troubles. And there are signs of that conflict all over this area, but there are also signs of the newly found peace.
It'll be at the end of the bridge on the roundabout. As I go around, I'll go slowly around a bit. It'll be on your right hand side, the way you can get a quick snap as we go around.
As we made our way into the city of Derry, Joe made sure to drive around and show us some of the important spots around the city, especially the ones that told the story of the Troubles. As we enter the city of Derry, here you can see the statue with two people. Their hands are reaching toward each other, but they are not quite touching, to show that the peace that they have right now is still fragile. When they come to a stronger peace agreement, they're going to join the two hands of the statues together.
Why they call it the Peace Bridge is that in the height of the Troubles here, a lot of the Protestant people from this side of the river moved across to the other side of the river. Now that there's peace, they put the bridge and they call that the Peace Bridge. Now, it cost, I think it was 18 million or something like that to build it, but they couldn't build it straight. And the reason they didn't build it straight is that the theme is that there's, you know, peace never comes in a straight line. You have got to work in peace. And that's why that it's curved.
As we made our way around the city of Derry, we drove past several of the murals. There are many murals in this area that tell the story of some of the struggles that happened here.
You see the gas mask and the fellow with the petrol bomb. They used to be throwing petrol bombs, you see.
We made our way around to City Hotel Derry. This hotel was in a great location in downtown Derry. We were able to walk to all of the major sites that we wanted to see, and our room had an amazing view. There's cookies? Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Okay. I think that's just like a kettle for tea.
Okay.
Like to heat up water. But instant coffee seems to be the norm in Ireland. I kind of saw that coming. It's the same as Belize. They're tea drinkers. This is a great view.
Yeah. Okay, you got the
Holy
Peace Bridge.
cow.
Probably no.
Oh man. That is so cool. All right. So, no dinner tonight, right?
No,
we're just
we're
kind
on
of
our
on our
own.
own now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Which, yeah, I don't really... I feel like the fatigue is hitting us now. We've been awake for like more than 24 hours, essentially.
Plane ride was nice though.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, that plane was huge, and they fed you twice.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was really neat having the in-flight entertainment. So
It went fast, actually.
it really did. It was a very pleasant flight. But
Napped a little bit.
it was just like one of those marathon travel days.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't have to think really. We just got to get pass through security. Once you do that, you're good with a trip like this.
We're not driving. Like
Yeah. We're just
that's the big thing.
along for the ride.
We don't have to drive, so it's nice. You can really relax. Oh,
Timed out.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've ever had to use the adapter.
That work? Yeah.
That's good. We were hoping. It's neat. Different money, different plugs, different time zone.
Hopefully, it doesn't blow my phone up.
Does it work?
No.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh no.
Man. Didn't seem.
It took us a little while to figure out that the outlet has a switch right next to it that you have to turn on. So we decided to hang out in the hotel room tonight because we were so exhausted, and how could you go wrong with enjoying this view? But we heard that in the Harbor Square they were going to be doing the tree lighting tonight at 7 p.m. So we were trying our very hardest to stay up so that we could see the tree lighting because we had the perfect view from our room. They just lit the 2 Christmas trees, the one in this circle and then the one, bigger one right behind it. And they have like music and there's a bunch of people in the park over there. If we weren't totally exhausted and struggling to stay awake, it would be nice to go over there, but I think we've hit our limit.
Got a classic car over there playing music.
Oh, that's neat.
Police escort. I assume Santa's coming.
Oh. At first I was kind of confused about why we were coming to Ireland this time of year. Like, it's, you know, cold and wet and all that, but I was like, it is pretty neat getting to see all the Christmas decorations, so that's definitely a bonus. Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of people. Oh yeah, there's a float. Santa! Santa! There ended up being this little parade, but it looked very different than a holiday parade that we're used to. Am I gonna get a copyright strike for this? Probably. I'm going to take that music out just so YouTube doesn't get mad at me, but this was a really interesting parade. There were these inflatable floats that people were pulling on little carts. They also lit the string of lights in the trees over by the river, and we had such a perfect view. It would have been great to go down and actually be standing among everybody as they paraded by, but we were really at our limit of sleep deprivation, so we were just keeping our eyes open to watch the parade go by.
They're parking over here.
Setting up in that parking lot. Yeah. We got a good night's sleep, but we still felt kind of off. because it was about 2 a.m. at home, so our bodies were pretty confused at this point. We went downstairs for breakfast and then went to get ready for the day. We're taking the stairs up to, what are we on, the 6th floor?
Third.
Oh, third. It felt like the 6th. Get a little bit of exercise. That's the bad thing about being on a bus trip. I feel like all we've been doing is sitting for like forever. The sun is finally starting to come up over Derry. We just had breakfast and now we are getting ready to go out for the day. The tour bus is going to leave at 9 o'clock and it is 3:20 a.m. New Jersey time. My body has no idea like what time it is, whether I'm coming or going or day or night. It's so confusing. I've never done a time change and an overnight flight like that where we pulled an all-nighter. It's so disorienting, but I feel like because we didn't go out last night, we're like starting to get back on track. I think we slept for like 9 hours, but it was still, flipping day and night. So today we're going to be going to the Giant's Causeway, which is something that I never actually thought I would see in person, so I'm pretty excited that we are going to see that place. We're going to explore a little village. I think we're going to a castle later, and then we have a nice dinner. So this trip has been so different for us, especially because we just got back from camping. So the idea that we are sleeping in beds and we don't have to drive, we just get on the bus and we get to eat hot food and sort of have coffee. The coffee situation is basically, it's instant coffee. So we're still going to be on the hunt for hopefully some stronger coffee somewhere. There's got to be somewhere that they have a good coffee shop, hopefully. I want to try this electric kettle because this is such a European thing. So there's the plug. It's just neat that the plugs look so different. All the different things about traveling to another country, but these electric kettles are super popular in Europe and you pretty much never see them in the US. And I was watching a video about the differences between Europe and the US and how popular these kettles are. So this is kind of a neat experience for being across the ocean for the first time. So we'll see. How do you turn it on? There we go. Okay, but again, instant coffee, and they drink a lot of tea here. So it's pretty easy to get tea, but not so much with the coffee. That was super fast. I feel like I just plugged it in and I went to get my hat and gloves and it was already making noise. That's pretty crazy how fast that is. One of the other great things about being in a hotel every day is that we don't have to struggle to keep our cameras charged, because when we go camping, that's like a constant thing. We're trying to charge our phones, our multiple cameras, all the, little things that we have with us, sometimes our GPS, all that stuff. We're always trying to find a source of electricity, but now we're getting spoiled on this trip. We have the ability to charge things every day, which also means that I will film more, because sometimes when we're camping I'm worried about the battery dying and like missing something, where here I can film as much as I want because I know every single day I'm going to start with a full charge on the battery. So that's really nice. I get to do more like time lapses and things like that without having to worry about draining the battery. This is definitely a new experience for us. We've never done such a big time zone change, and yesterday it really messed us up because we basically pulled an all-nighter plus some, like way more than 24 hours without really getting sleep, and we were just like not functioning. We were saying this morning that if we were maybe like 10 years younger, if you're in your 20s and you did something like that, we probably would have been out partying last night and like walking around the town. But now in our later 30s, when you do that time change and pull an all-nighter, I was like, I just didn't have the energy or the motivation to do anything last night, because it would have been really cool to walk around the city and explore. So today we're going to try to cram
as much as we can in, because I'm feeling a lot better today, just getting some sleep. Still feeling, kind of off, but definitely better now that I've slept.
No, the wool is worth nothing nowadays. Once upon a time, wool was valuable, but not anymore. They just keep them now for the meat, and lamb is very expensive. They export a lot of it.
We got on the bus and we were making a trip about an hour north of Derry to the very top of the island of Ireland. And the northern coast is just amazing. The cliffs and the rough ocean and waves below, the little cottages perched along the seaside, just amazing. We were going to see a castle in this beautiful area.
Wow, yeah, those are big waves. Gosh.
Now, what's interesting up here on the Antrim coast is the rock formation, folks. You can see there on the right, you can see the limestone is the white stuff. Up on top, then you've got the basalt. So you've got basalt and limestone side by side,
The great thing about being on this bus trip was that as we went from place to place, Joe would talk about all sorts of information for that area, which was great because I didn't do any research ahead of time for this trip.
Ireland, of course, is surrounded by water, and somebody asked me about the Atlantic out here. Up around Dublin there, you've got the Irish Sea, and then we come up around Belfast, you get the North Channel, then you meet the Atlantic, then you go down around the east coast, you find St. George's Channel, and then you're back up to the Irish Sea again.
We were just blown away by this area. The cliffs with the emerald green grass on the top and the huge waves below. It was incredible. But we were on our way to my favorite day of this trip in Ireland, to go to Dunluce Castle and then over to the Giant's Causeway. Just incredible. So make sure you stick around for the next video. For our first full day in Ireland, we had quite the itinerary scheduled for us. We got onto the bus and headed to the very north part of Ireland, just along the coast. There is a castle perched on top of a cliff called Dunluce Castle. And this castle was actually the inspiration for the Greyjoy Castle in Game of Thrones. So we were pretty excited to see this, and the scenery could not have been better. Dunluce Castle is described as one of the most picturesque and romantic castles in Ireland. The castle was originally built in the 1500s, but quite a lot has gone on here. It has changed hands and has seen quite a bit of fighting over those years. In 1639, the back section of the castle fell from the cliff and tumbled down into the sea. And the castle today is very much a ruin of what it once was, but you can imagine how grand this used to be back when people lived here and the structure was intact. There are several places around the castle that they are doing some repair work to try to preserve what remains of the structure.
You took him down to the river, he walked in, and he left it like the salmon.
The castle is positioned out on the cliff on the other side of this deep valley. So you have to go over a bridge to get to the structure itself, which must have been a great asset when they were trying to defend this location.
Hey, you didn't, sir, you're not cool.
Oh, no, right.
It's on your side, that's the difference. You get to my age with about 4 layers on in the morning.
For now.
Alright.
Our guide told us about the history of this castle, including a story about a woman who used to live here and she was killed when she tried to get into a boat to run away and get married, and she is said to be the ghost that can be found in the castle. We marveled at how rough the ocean was and how green the tops of the cliffs were. We had come to Ireland prepared for rain, and I felt so lucky that once again we actually had sunshine. It was cold and damp, especially here along the ocean side, but it was a beautiful day for this time of year, so we really got to enjoy walking around the castle. And it was amazing to be in this place. It is almost exactly what I would have pictured, but more beautiful.
If you look at the modern day television and you have Game of Thrones, this was one of the Game of Thrones sites. There's 26 in Northern Ireland, this is one of them. For anybody who's a fan, this is the home of the Castle of the Greyjoys. You have a bit of an imagination with all the trick photography.
Filming this trip came with some new challenges. This was our first bigger group trip, and I really try not to film other people too much if I can help it. The other challenge was the light and shadow. Because the sun was out, I was getting these very strong light and shadow, and that made it challenging to actually get good footage sometimes. We continued around to see some of the other rooms in the castle and trying to imagine this when there was a roof and when there was furniture and life was going on inside of these walls. We came back out through the main entrance with this famous facade out to the bridge that brings you across to the other side. As the tour ended, our guide mentioned something about going to the parking lot to have a toast with some whiskey. And I thought he was joking at first because I think it was about 10:30 or 11 in the morning at this point, but he was not joking. Next thing I knew, we were in the parking lot and everybody was getting a shot of whiskey. After our morning shot of whiskey at a castle in Ireland, we got back onto the bus and we were headed to our second stop of the day. So we were going to the Giant's Causeway, and this was about 15 minutes away, and to get there we were just driving along this incredible coastline of Northern Ireland. Now, I was thrilled that the sun was out and this was a great day for exploring the Giant's Causeway. But it made filming a little bit challenging. Like I said, the sun creates a glare on the glass, so this was quite a difficult trip to film. Hopefully you can still enjoy the scenery from the Irish countryside, even with that little bit of glare. But the great thing is that since we were on the bus, both Patrick and myself got to enjoy these views the entire time. We didn't have to worry about navigating or getting lost or driving or any of that stuff. So that was making this whole process of seeing Ireland really relaxing and enjoyable. We got pretty bundled up as we headed to the Giant's Causeway because this is a pretty exposed area of coastline. It's so nice that the sun is out, but it's still pretty chilly. From the parking area, we walked over to the visitor center, and this is where we got to learn more about how unique this geological feature is. The columns that make up the Giant's Causeway are basalt, and they were formed in this extremely unique shape by the volcanic activity that was going on here. And the columns are flat on the sides. They can have 5, 6, 7, or sometimes even 8 sides. and they're flat on the top, which makes them almost like little stepping stones that you can climb around on. But when you are walking around on them, you have to be very careful because they're quite slippery. They're always wet. The columns go right into the sea, and there are waves crashing over the top of them. So you have to be quite careful with your footing and make sure that you wear good footwear. While we were in the visitor center, we also learned about the mythology that surrounds this area, the story of why this particular area was created. We picked up our audio guides and then opted to walk down. You can also get a shuttle if you prefer not to walk. I've seen many pictures of the rocks themselves, but the walk down to get to the area where the famous rocks are is almost as amazing. The cliff sides and the rocks in the ocean, this was such a nice walk. I just kept looking around and taking pictures. The colors were amazing because the sun was out. So the walk of just getting there was just as enjoyable as climbing around on these famous rocks. As we walked around, we listened to the audio guide, which told us all sorts of information about what happened in this area. And we got to learn the story of how this area became called the Giant's Causeway. And the myth goes that there was a giant that lived in Scotland and a giant that lived in Ireland. And they were going to meet to fight each other. So the causeway was created so that they could have this fight. But the Irish giant knew that the Scottish giant was bigger. So he devised a plan to have his wife tuck him into a crib and cover him with a blanket. When the Scottish giant arrived, he saw what he thought was the baby and thought, well, if that's how large the baby is, I don't want to fight the father. So he returned back to Scotland and destroyed the causeway connecting Scotland and Ireland. And that is how the Giant's Causeway got its name. We spent some time very carefully walking around on the rocks. You have to be extra mindful of where you're putting your feet and making sure that you have your balance because the rocks are very wet and slippery. And you do not want to fall on these. They actually have someone who stays here and they're like a little bit of a lifeguard. They keep an eye on everybody and make sure that you are safe while you're trying to get that Instagram-worthy photo. Although we did not climb out onto the highest area of the rocks because it just looked too precarious and the waves were really large. There have been people who have slipped in and it didn't go well. So we were staying safely on this area and it was still absolutely amazing. I could have climbed around on these rocks all day. Sometimes when you see pictures of things or videos of places that you're going to visit, and then you actually get there, it doesn't always live up to the expectations. But that was not the case at all with Giant's Causeway. I feel like this vastly exceeded my expectations. I've seen pictures of the stones and I thought how neat to be able to walk around on them on the ocean side, but actually being there and seeing the entire area, the cliffs, the green tops, the giant waves, the beautiful sky, the whole experience absolutely exceeded what I expected from seeing the Giant's Causeway. When you get to the end of the basalt columns, you can see they just go down into the ocean and disappear. So it really connects you to that mythology, especially because on the other side, on Scotland, there are similar basalt columns. So it really makes you feel connected to that mythology. We slowly and carefully made our way back up toward the parking area. I did not feel like I was ready to leave this place yet, but since we were with a group tour, we had to stay on the group schedule. So we took as many pictures as we possibly could to remember this place and then made our way back up toward the top. Sister, welcome back. Back up by the visitor center, we saw that there's actually a bed and breakfast located just next door. This would be an awesome place to stay. There's a hotel if you want to stay here, and if we had more time, we would walk some of these trails, so you can actually go up over to the top there, and even on the sides of the mountain down by the Causeway. There's a lot of hiking trails, but we have to be back at the bus in like 15 minutes, so it's kind of the bad side about being on a bus tour. You get to see a lot, but everything, you're kind of moving quick. The network of hiking trails looked so inviting. To walk along the tops of those cliffs must give you an incredible view, but we were heading back to the visitor center and back onto the bus. Now, one of the reasons that we were on such a time crunch is because they wanted to get us back to the city with enough time to explore Derry. And as sad as I was to leave the Giant's Causeway, I was really looking forward to walking around and exploring the walled city. There is so much to see there. This is also why this particular day is one of my all-time favorite travel days. From seeing a castle on a cliffside to climbing around on the Giant's Causeway and then walking around the walled city of Derry. There was so much experience that we packed into this day, but that's going to be in the next video. So make sure that you are subscribed so you can come along with us. Our time was limited when we were visiting Dunluce Castle and when we got to explore the Giant's Causeway, because we were trying to save time to come back to Derry and walk around the city, because there's so much to see here, especially the walls that the city is famous for. We walked past a coffee shop and Pat had to stop and get some, of course. Oh, you can go on top. Pat's just getting a coffee. He went to get a coffee.
Oh.
Oh, and here's one of the churches. Or is that the guild place? Around the walled city, there are several gates. You can drive through at these gates, and then there are also staircases where you can walk up on top of the wall, which gives you such a great view of the city. There are interpretive signs that give you some more information about the history of this area, and they even had some of the old cannons positioned up on top of the wall. That is the clock tower of the Guild Hall, and that's the one that you can see from our hotel room. Such a great view. But we were trying to walk around Derry as quickly as we could before we lost the sunlight, but also because we had a scheduled activity tonight to go to Guildhall and meet the mayor, which at this time we were kind of confused about why exactly we were doing that, but it ended up being a very neat part of our trip. It was great to see all the Christmas decorations that were out on the street, but we had to keep moving. We really were racing against the light because the days are shorter now, so we were trying to fit as much in as we could before we lost the light. Even though we were rushing to fit this in, the timing was still nice because it was just sunset, so the light was very interesting. There were these beautifully colored clouds in the sky, and we figured out that the walled area is actually very walkable. We were not gone for too long, maybe about an hour, and we were kind of taking our time, stopping and looking at sights, so that's nice that this is a very accessible thing to do.
So the wall just goes all the way around.
All the way around, yeah.
You could walk the whole damn thing.
At least you get to see the city.
Yeah, different view.
Yeah, it saved you all that time walking through.
This is our first time being on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's our first time in Ireland. So one of the things that I thought was so interesting was the amount of character and detail in the buildings. You know, everything on this side of the ocean is so much older than in the US. So the buildings have all of this detail and all of this character that you don't see as often when you're in the US.
Erected in 1628 by the Honorable the Irish Society.
The walls were built between 1613 and 1618, and this is said to be one of the best examples of a walled city in Europe. As we made our way around to Bishopsgate, the views just kept getting better. The sunset was awesome, and we were kind of lifted up above the city more, so you could see for quite a while around you. It was also so nice to be able to explore the city without having to cross the street or navigate traffic at all. You were really just able to walk around and soak in the views. We did such a quick exploration of the city. There were quite a few things that I wish we had more time to visit, like this old church. But we were making our way back toward the hotel before it got dark, and we had one more spot that we wanted to make sure we got to see, and that was the Peace Bridge. So as it got dark, we made our way over toward the river. The Peace Bridge is a pedestrian bridge that goes across the River Foyle. It was opened in June of 2011, And it was quite busy on this night. There were a lot of locals using it to get from one side of the river to the other, and a lot of tourists taking pictures. The bridge itself has two main columns, and those columns are said to be symbolic of uniting the two different groups of people who were previously in conflict.
Just get off the dirt.
Oh yeah. The location of our hotel was perfect because it was very close walking distance to the Peace Bridge and to the walled part of the city and all of the main areas that you want to see. So we took a walk across to the other side of the bridge, but then we headed back because we were on our way to the Guildhall. We weren't sure what was actually going on that night, but we knew that we were going to meet the mayor. From the outside, Guildhall looks like a cathedral, but this is actually where the city council meets, and the building has a lot of history. Downstairs, there's a museum. We weren't allowed to film in the museum part, but then we went upstairs to the large hall, and we were given some wine, and it was just like a nice little meet and greet. And we got to hear from one of the city workers about the history of this building. And this building has been through so many different things. Fires, it was bombed several times during the Troubles. So a lot of it has been reconstructed, but the building is still quite amazing. And one of the neatest things in this particular room is the organ. The organ in Guildhall was installed in 1914, and it consists of 3,132 pipes. So this is an impressive organ, and they asked us if anyone wanted to try playing it. And there was one person in our group who knew how to play piano, and he wanted to give it a try. So we were excited to actually hear what the organ sounds like. This is great.
Dennis can play the piano, he said. Oh, really?
That's pretty cool, Dennis.
I'm so glad somebody was brave enough to try to play this giant pipe organ, and I would say that was pretty good for somebody who's never played such a complex instrument. Then we got to actually meet the mayor of Derry, and this was more fun than we expected. I think this whole night was kind of a nice little surprise of the trip. But then we were heading back to the hotel because this incredible travel day was not over yet. We had been to Dunluce Castle and the Giant's Causeway. We walked around the walled city. We got to meet the mayor at Guildhall, and now we were going back to have a great dinner at City Hotel.
The Titanic?
But thank you, sir. Thank you.
It was a full day.
It was, yeah.
We did a lot today.
Yeah.
After a busy travel day, we were ready for our first Guinness of the trip.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. I got a Guinness mustache? It is better. Pat, it is better than home.
Is it right?
It's a little lighter, I think.
It's not as heavy as it, like everyone says it's like a heavy beer, but I don't think it's heavy. It's just dark. That's all.
Yeah.
You know.
That scares you away sometimes.
Yeah. It's not syrup. It's pretty light.
I'm not usually much of a beer drinker, but I figured when in Ireland, you kind of have to. I think it does taste better here.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at my beer.
We ended off this amazing travel day with one of my favorite meals that we had in Ireland. Leek soup and salad. Patrick had the chicken. I had the fish pie, and then a sampler with 3 different types of dessert. So a great ending to one of the best travel days ever. We still have a lot to share from Ireland, so we will see you in the next one. It's a little bit foggy out there. The upper part of the hill is kind of covered in clouds, which is really neat. We're getting ready. We just had breakfast, and now we're getting ready to head down to the bus and go off to our next stop. This was a really quick trip to Derry, but I feel like it was a good introduction and definitely somewhere that I would consider coming back to again. I feel like you could spend quite a few weeks just kind of exploring the city and seeing all the sights around here. So that's always a neat thing when you visit somewhere and you want to come back.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of Northern Ireland. It's a good spot.
I never thought I would come here, really. So it's, I feel like that makes it like kind of extra neat to be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you can visit now.
Yeah. Yeah, we walked around the city. It was fine.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was very nice. Yeah, very clean. You couldn't ask for much more from a city.
All right, ready to head down?
Suppose so.
To the bus.
And come back.
We got back onto the bus because we were moving from Derry to our second location of the trip. We were heading through Belfast, and then a little bit south of there, we were going to be stopping at the Game of Thrones studio tour and then heading on to Carlingford. It's a game.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of game.
Early.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Neat.
That's different.
It was a bit damp and foggy out today, so we were glad that we had an indoor activity scheduled for the day. And since we didn't plan this trip, we were on a group tour, I didn't do any research ahead of time. We basically got the itinerary about 2 weeks before we left, so I didn't even really know what this Game of Thrones tour entailed, and I don't think we were that excited about it until we actually got there. And we got lost on the way there, so it actually took a bit longer than it should have. We ended up in some very narrow lane, and the bus driver had to do a K-turn with a bus. But thanks to Joe's impressive driving skills, we did end up making it to the Game of Thrones tour. To start the tour, they gathered us into a room and showed us a movie to set the stage. We weren't allowed to film that part, but then a door opens and you walk through just like you are going north of the wall. And then you immediately see the characters that you would find on that side. One of the best things about Game of Thrones are the intricate costumes that they created for each of the characters, and you get to see those up close when you do the tour. We really think that Game of Thrones is one of the best shows that have ever been put together. When you consider the intricacy of the costumes, the sets, the acting, the storyline, it just comes together to create such a high quality show. You also get to see some of the components that went into the planning and design behind the scenes. The stages and the sets that they created were so intricate, and you get to see where these ideas started and how they actually developed them into what you see on the show. One of the interesting things about this tour is that most of the people who work in the facility were actually involved in the production in some way. Some of them were extras, some of them had roles, some of them worked behind the scenes, and you can ask them questions and talk to them about their experience in making the film, and they are so excited to talk about it. You can tell that they just loved their experience. As you walk around, you get to see different props. The dragon in the cage, the banners that they used for different scenes, and especially if you've seen the show, it brings back all of those iconic scenes and what was happening in that episode. So that's really fun. You also got to see how many different filming locations they used in Ireland, and we already went to the castle. We just got to talk to one of the workers who was actually an extra, or not even an extra, she had a role in the show, which is really neat.
This is gonna be jamming in the future. It's just a legend. Little do you know.
We were pretty surprised that our tour group was the only one there, and we talked to some of the workers. They said that they had only been open for a few months, so this is relatively new, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. We had never heard of it, and COVID really slowed down the whole process of opening up the studio tour. But I think in the upcoming years, as the word gets out, anybody who is a Game of Thrones fan would so enjoy this process. It just connects you that much more to the storyline, and you get to see the costumes and learn more about the characters, and you get to see the props in person, which I feel like connects you to the story so much more. You're a King's Guard. Oh, your dad's a White Walker.
Oh, geez, he would be.
The tour included some fun interactive exhibits if you wanted to become a White Walker, or if you wanted to take a picture of your face and have that added to the wall of faces. We were actually supposed to eat lunch while we're there, but Patrick and I spent so much time walking around and looking at the different exhibits that we didn't even eat lunch. We figured we would skip it and we would just eat when we got to Carlingford.
Already made up. It looks like I got makeup already made up.
The tour seemed to keep going and going. Every time we would turn a corner, you would see another iconic prop, or you would come upon another scene that was pivotal in the show, and it would just bring you right back to that experience, because if you've seen Game of Thrones, you know that it is very suspenseful. It is full of twists and turns and all sorts of things that you are not expecting, and I feel like the studio tour was very similar.
Yeah, you've seen me before.
The room with the map was one of my favorite parts. It was so neat to be in there. There were so many great scenes that were filmed in that room. But there was one area that we were looking forward to. We knew that the Iron Throne had to be somewhere, so we kept waiting for it to be around the next corner.
There it is.
This room was so well done. You had the dragon flying on the screens in the background, and you really felt like you were in the ruins of the castle with the music and all of the elements pulled together. You really felt like you were there. If you are a fan of Game of Thrones, we definitely recommend visiting the studio and maybe even visiting some of the on-site locations that you can see in Northern Ireland. That was actually neater than we expected it to be. We thought it was just going to be like a big open area where they had filmed some of the things, but you actually get to walk into the set. So that was really a super neat trip once we actually got here. After a few circles and getting lost for a little while, we finally made it, but I would say worth it.
Oh, the maternity hospital is separate, yeah. Some hospitals would have a maternity unit, you know, but in Limerick now, for instance, you have the UHL, the University Hospital. That's the big hospital, and then you have the maternity hospital at the other side of the city, you know.
We found out that the reason they got lost on the way to the studio is that they had the wrong address, so Patrick had helped him and made some phone calls, and they finally got the correct address.
Now you see where your man parks his car out the back door here, you see that? On the left.
Yes.
Look where you have to park.
Oh, Sister Chips.
Carlingford is located on the water, and this area has a bunch of things to do in the warmer weather. You can go out kayaking, there are hiking trails that I so wanted to try out, but since things were a little bit rushed and we were on a schedule on this trip, no time for hiking. But the drive-in gave you a nice overview of this little seaside town.
Now the main street is down to our right here where the car is turning up there, folks. Just a little bit down the left hand side, you can see it from here actually. That's to do with Darcy McGee. See there's a little monument on the right there. That's so Darcy McGee.
We were staying at the Four Seasons in Carlingford. Definitely not our usual accommodations. When we were checking in, most of the rooms were ready, but our room was not, and the manager immediately said, "Oh, I'm so sorry your room is not ready. Can I get you a drink at the bar?" And we were like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's a good way to pass the time." So we hung out in the bar and it was empty, so we just kind of relaxed and soaked in the scenery because the view out the window was so beautiful with the mountains in the background. And then we were ready to check into our room. Light. Okay.
Coffee and tea.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's the leisure center.
I mean, like bumping the music.
Oh, maybe like they're working out.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's probably what it is.
Maybe. I like the crushed velvet, the chairs and the bed. We are at the Four Seasons in Carlingford, and it was funny when the manager came on the bus to welcome us here, and he said that dinner or breakfast was going to be at 8, and everyone said, "Oh, 8 is too late. We leave at 9. Can you make it 7:30?" And he said, "Okay, yes, breakfast is at 7:30," just like that. And then when Pat and I came in, our room wasn't ready yet, so he immediately walked over and our key wasn't on the table, so he said, "Oh, come to the bar, let me get you a drink." And I was like, very, very attentive customer service, so that's always nice. We are going to take a walk downtown and hopefully find somewhere to eat. It's already getting dark. I feel like today went really fast, but this is supposed to be a very cute town, and we're going to be eating here tomorrow night, so we figured we would go to town tonight and hopefully find somewhere that is open, because it is a little bit of the off season, so like the hotel is a little bit quieter. Well, not quiet now because the 2 buses just got here, but our group will definitely keep it lively. I forgot to do a bathroom tour in the last place, but actually this bathroom is much nicer, so this one's more interesting. There's a nice big shower. The toilet doesn't face the wall, and the other place it faced the wall. So, all right, ready? Yes. Okay, to dinner. I haven't eaten since 7:30. Our first night in Carlingford was our free night, so we decided to walk into town and try to find somewhere to eat, which proved to be a little bit more challenging than we expected, because this is the down season for this area. It was just a short 5-minute walk from the Four Seasons at Carlingford to the historic part of the village, and they kept referring to this as a Viking village, and we looked it up. This area was invaded by the Vikings in the 9th century, and they occupied this area because it was such an important port in the area because of its location.
Yeah, they're down the street. Down the street.
When we walked around the town, we realized there weren't many places that were open, but we found one bar and restaurant that was open, and it seemed like everyone from our tour group ended up in there. Even though it was the only restaurant in town, we kind of lucked out because the food ended up being quite good. I got to try their fish and chips, and they put us in this really neat little nook with some Christmas decorations. It was just a great spot. Get it. Well, they do have a good sense of humor, I will say. We enjoyed the Christmas decorations as we made our way back from the historic part of Carlingford to our hotel. There are some very old, interesting buildings that they now have the restaurants and shops in, so we wanted to come back the next day after we were done with our excursions to explore a bit more, but we got a little glimpse. The hotel did a great job with their Christmas decorations. We made our way back into the bar and lounge area because we were told that there was some live music. The guys were kind of tired, so they went to bed, but Megan and I stayed up. When we got here last night, it was just about getting dark because it's almost December, so it gets dark pretty early, but it's actually a nice view. Got some cute little houses across the street, nice mountain. This is a little more mountainous. And then if you kind of peek down there, you can see the castle. So, oh, and the ships. We're right on the waterfront here, and this is a big area for fishing and boating, and if we were here in the warmer months, we would actually be able to go kayaking and that sort of thing. But it does look like a good weather day, so still kind of lucking out with that. That's nice. We had another good breakfast today. I think the Irish breakfast is really growing on me. They always have a tomato, and a lot of places they'll have mushrooms. I love mushrooms, so Might have to start doing that at home. But today we're going to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and then I think we're going to, what are we doing after that? A distillery?
Yeah, I think a gin distillery maybe.
Okay. And then more live music later, so should be another fun night. After breakfast, we got onto the bus and enjoyed about an hour drive through the Irish countryside north of Carlingford. So we were going to the area known as Downpatrick, and this is where St. Patrick's grave is located. There is a cathedral right next to his grave, and just all things St. Patrick related in this whole area. The schools are named after St. Patrick, the roads, everything has the word Patrick in it. So we started at the St. Patrick's Center, where we got to watch a welcome video and learned a lot more about the life of St. Patrick and the history of Ireland in general. And then we were able to spend some time in the gift shop, and they have a little cafe here as well, before we made our way up the hill to St. Patrick's grave. Now, Patrick and I are not really big on souvenir shopping, so our guide offered to show us the newly finished Christmas exhibit. They were getting ready for a children's program, and they had just finished putting this very elaborate walkway together with these beautifully done Christmas decorations. So he walked us through, and it was so neat. I can't imagine how much time the staff must have put into all of these decorations. We got to take a picture in Santa's chair before making our way back onto the bus. It's very neat.
Yeah.
They put a lot of work into this.
It's like a haunted house for joy. Yeah.
A festive
haunted joyful house. Haunted house.
It's not what I expected to see here.
Yeah.
These offices all the way up to the court house here on the top right hand side, and we have got that's one of the oldest courthouses in Ireland, Georgian courthouse. It's listed. Some of the felons are still outside. On your right hand side we've got Down County Museum. You're going to be visiting that. They used to hang people from the gibbet outside there. Judges' residences on your right hand side. On the left is the Southwell building, built in 1733. Straight ahead is the medieval Cathedral of Down with the Celtic cross.
The bus brought us up to the top of the hill where Down Cathedral is located, and right across from that is the very old cemetery where St. Patrick's grave is located. And I thought it interesting that our guide told us a lot of Celtic holy sites were located on high ground. They thought this was a way to be closer to the spiritual realm. At the top is the large stone that covers St. Patrick's grave. We learned that this used to be covered in dirt, but many people would come and take a handful of dirt, which was thought to be something that would bring you luck if you were setting out on a long journey. They put the stone here to protect the ground. We also learned that St. Patrick was born in Britain, and when he was 16, he was captured and sold into slavery in Ireland. He eventually escaped and fled to France, but he felt called back to Ireland because he felt that he had to go back and do the work of spreading Christianity.
Graveyard. Well, not every time, but often we find the remains of our Celtic ancestors. Recently we discovered 6 people buried standing up along the line of the wall that goes around the graveyard. Wow. We only realised it because one of them, a very tall man, fell out. In that direction.
Oh.
And it's not like CSI Downpatrick, there's not a big inquiry. If you've got your own graveyard, you can quietly reinter people. Just put them the right way around and put them back in again.
Our guide for this portion of the trip was great. He was both informative and entertaining. He had all sorts of interesting stories as an expert on this period of history and this area. And he was tasked with the difficult job of trying to get a group picture of us all touching the stone over St. Patrick's grave. Then we walked across to Down Cathedral. Check out the cathedral.
Yep.
Although it's not as big as some of the cathedrals that we will see when we're in Dublin, this one is quite old and it has a charm and a character, especially with these beautiful doors.
Yeah.
This location on the hill has a long history as a Celtic holy site. But about 800 years ago, monks from Normandy were invited over to establish a monastery and a cathedral on this site. So many parts of the building date back to 1183. There was a restoration done in the 1800s to update the interior space.
It's a work of art, as I'm sure you would agree, that again dates back to the 1800s and works perfectly. Sounds gorgeous. It's a shame you probably won't be staying here for our Christmas concert on Christmas Eve, because it does sound gorgeous. But you are very welcome. We're online. You can just get it up on the website and you can listen.
The interior of this cathedral is described as light and calm. And I definitely agree with that compared to some of the other larger cathedrals that we went to see where the interior was rather dark. There's a lot of natural light in here and it just gives it such a peaceful feeling.
Put your name in the book.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's neat. We're in the book.
We're in the book.
Just down the hill from the cathedral, we went into the Down County Museum, and they had a few different exhibits here, but it was definitely colder and damper than it has been, so we were just happy to be inside to look at things, and we went in to check out their jail area.
Very solid. It'd be weird if one of my ancestors was like, was here. Probably.
Just stay in there a couple minutes.
Yeah.
One of the funniest things that Megan spotted in the museum exhibit was this tag that you could put on your shirt if you were going out for a good night out and maybe you had a little bit too much fun but wanted to make sure you made it home at the end of the night. One of the highlights of the museum is the original cross from Downpatrick. Then it was back onto the bus to make our way back into Carlingford for our free afternoon. We were listening to some Irish music on the bus, which definitely gets you in the spirit. And when we got back to Carlingford, we had a little while to explore before our banquet dinner that night in the hotel.
Though they say the times are hard and they've handed me my cards.
We're back from our explorations from the day and we're throwing on some extra layers because it's pretty chilly out today, even though the sun kind of peeked out now. The clouds are coming in and it's really cold and damp, so we actually dressed a little bit lighter today because we thought all the stuff we were doing was kind of inside, but it's actually really cold. So I'm having a pre-coffee. We're going out for coffee and we're going to throw some extra layers on and then go take a walk downtown and explore the town because we only got to see it at night last night, so now we get a little bit of free time before dinner. You know it's cold when Patrick layers up. I'm always layered up, but
It's just like, it's not super cold, but it's just going through you.
it's so damp, yeah. We made the short 5-minute walk from our hotel into the historic part of downtown Carlingford, and since we were there during the day, there were more shops and restaurants open. We were on a mission to find a coffee shop that was open to stay inside and warm up because it was a little bit drizzly. We were so lucky it didn't rain very much, but we would have days like this where it was just kind of misty and everything was damp. we were lucky to find a cute little coffee shop in the historic part of town. We were very happy to be inside and to warm up and have real coffee. After we finished our warm beverages, we were feeling ready to go out and explore Carlingford a bit more. You can see this arrow points up the mountain to the hiking trails. I would so love to come back here and explore the mountains and do a little bit of hiking. One of the things that I love to do when we're traveling is go to a grocery store. It's a great way to see what it's like to be a local in that area. You can look at different types of foods, find things that you've never heard of. You get an idea of what things cost in that area, so it's a neat little glimpse into what life is like in a certain region. Then we started to make our way back toward the hotel because tonight we had our group dinner at the Four Seasons. There's always fun little things that you notice when you're traveling. They're just different from home, which is part of the fun of it. And there's a few little things around just the hotel rooms that I've noticed. So of course the plugs are different, so we have our adapter, but then the lights all have switches to like turn them on and off. So a couple times we've plugged something in and thought, oh, it's not working, but you actually have to flip the switch to turn that outlet on. The showers were a little confusing at first because one side you actually turn the shower on and then the other side is how you adjust the heat, which took us quite a while to figure out, but that's been in the last hotel, in this hotel. Figuring out the money has been interesting because when we were in Northern Ireland, it was pounds sterling, and then when we come down here, it switches to euros. So we were kind of like going back and forth with the money. And the money's interesting because euros are like different sizes and they use coins a lot more than we do. If you get like $1 or $2 change, they'll actually give you coins instead of bills. And the time is the other interesting thing. So when they were telling us what time dinner was, it was 6:30 instead of saying 6:30 or 6:30. It would say 6:30 or 7:30, and we would be like, what time is that? So it's just the funny little things that are different that you kind of pick up on when you're traveling. On this night we had our group meal in the ballroom at the Four Seasons, and we're a pretty big group, so it's kind of hard to accommodate the 2 buses worth of people. But we started out the meal with a goat cheese tart, and then I heard that salmon was one of the things you needed to try when you were in Ireland, so tonight was the night that I had salmon. Oh, it is mushy peas. Okay. You can eat it.
I'm afraid to touch it. I'll do for beef.
Patrick had the beef, and they also serve family-style vegetables, which was really just a few different types of potatoes and some other root vegetables.
What about Megan? You want this?
And for dessert, there were cream puffs or a raspberry cheesecake mousse. Since we were in the ballroom and we had all this space, they decided they wanted to take a group picture because the group is so big it's really hard to have enough room to fit everybody in. And since I walk around with this big camera all day, they came over and asked me if I would like to take the group picture for them, because I guess it looked like I knew what I was doing, which I always find funny. So Patrick and I agreed that we could take the group picture, and they got everybody organized, and we took a couple pictures with the group, and then Patrick and I jumped in so that we could be in the group picture. But here's everybody from the 2 buses of the Cara Irish Society that were on the 2022 Irish trip.
Is everybody ready? Okay, go right in the middle there. 1, 2, 3.
It is no easy thing getting this large of a group organized, settled, and trying to get everybody to look at the camera at the same time. But it was a really fun experience, and I'm glad that we were able to take a group picture and get everybody in at one time.
A few more cameras out there in the moment, so everyone get ready. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We ended off another great day on this trip to Ireland by going down to the lounge and listening to some live music and enjoying some drinks. So we will see you in the next one.
One of your cards is telling me you're happy.
We were back on the bus for our final travel day, going from Carlingford down toward Dublin. But on our way toward Dublin, we had a stop to make rather early in the morning. This was the day that we were doing the gin tour. And this was another thing on the itinerary that I was actually not that excited about, but it ended up being very interesting. Windy and cold. This is a small family-owned distillery, and they've only been open for a few years, but they have done some very interesting things. And I love the fact that they put so much work and so much passion into creating their product. You really feel like that comes through. This is not just a distillery, it's actually a gin school. So you can come and take classes and they teach you how to make your own gin with your own little still, and you can play around with all the ingredients on the table. It was so interesting to hear about the method that they use to come up with the flavors. We also learned that making hand sanitizer saved this business when they were closed during COVID.
One in the corner, my name is Sarah. First of all, has everybody got a gin and tonic that would like one? Shite? Okay, we're all good so far.
And florals. Now, even if you were making a spicy gin or if you were making a floral gin, if you're making a spicy gin, you'll still put in some florals, okay, and the same the other way around.
Barn owls, right? When the people who came to design the label saw that we had the 2 barn owls, and they thought it would be a great idea to have the owl on the bottle.
The staff here was incredibly informative, and you can tell that they just love their job. And I think we had the best gin and tonic that I've ever tasted. The gin that they make is so refreshing, and the flavor is quite amazing. So just doing really neat things there with that small family business. We got back onto the bus and started making our way down toward Dublin for our last stop of this trip. As we got into Dublin, it was still too early to check into the hotel, so our bus driver did a tour of the city, showing off more of his amazing driving skills, but giving us a good overview of what we might want to look at over our day in Dublin. And some of the interesting things that he showed us were the fact that the doors of the houses in Dublin are kind of a big deal. The different colors that people paint their doors. It's kind of a fun thing that they do to make their house a bit different. This is the hotel we were staying at, the Grisham Hotel. And as the trip went on, our accommodations got a little bit fancier every night, which is kind of neat. And it was in a great location in the city to be able to walk everywhere. So it's always nice when you have that easy access of just walking out the front door of your hotel, going in any direction, and being able to see the sights of Dublin.
That's the River Liffey we're crossing there now, folks. And the Dublin people have nicknames and everything. They call that the Sniffy Liffey. Directly in front of you is Trinity College. You have 3 universities here in Dublin. You've got Trinity College, originally built for Protestant people only. Anybody can go in there now. You've got UCD, University College Dublin, and DCU, Dublin City University. Now up here in the middle of the road you'll see a statue of Thomas More. He was a poet. Museum, if you want to go in and have a look at that.
We were there. Yeah, we said, yeah.
We got to see the famous Halfpenny Bridge. It used to cost you a penny to walk to the other side of the river over that bridge, and we started to scope out some coffee shops. It was looking pretty good for our Dublin portion. We drove past the Guinness factory, and unfortunately we did not have time to go on the tour. I've heard that is very fun. But we were getting the lay of the land, and our bus driver dropped us off at the hotel so we could put our bags in the room. It wasn't ready quite yet, so we headed out to walk around the city and try to kill time until our rooms were ready. We got some coffee at a nice coffee shop and then started to kind of wander aimlessly around the city to try to get the lay of the land. We ended up going down toward the waterfront and we stumbled upon the Famine Memorial. And this is definitely something to see. It's one of the things that we're interested in learning more about in terms of Irish history. And right across the street there is a famine museum. If we had more time, we really would have liked to have gone in there. It talks a lot about how many people left Ireland during that time and their mode of transportation, which was known as a coffin ship, which is this ship right here. Again, if we had more time, we could have gone on a tour where you can actually go onto the ship and see what the living conditions are like.
The crane's moving.
The crane? Oh, yeah, there's a lot of construction going on.
Lots.
One of the main purposes of this trip was to help people with Irish ancestry to feel more of a connection to that heritage, and I think this trip definitely had that effect. This is the Famine Museum that we really debated whether or not we should go see, but we decided that we wanted to spend our time walking around the city and exploring more.
I'm observant. They'll ask me to find something.
Tear it off.
We grabbed a quick little lunch and then made our way back to the hotel, hoping that our rooms would be ready and we would be able to check in. So now you get the first view of this nice hotel. Definitely not our normal accommodations, that's for sure. Hopefully our room is ready. We finally got our room. This is the smallest of all the rooms, and unfortunately not much of a view unlike the other rooms, but it does have a heated towel rack. That'll be neat. Never used a heated towel rack. So a little older fixtures, and the shower looks interesting. There's a lot of things going on there. I like the rain showers here. I'm not really a fan of them, but yeah, heated towel rack. There's the room. Hopefully Pat makes it to dinner. Patrick squeezed in a quick nap before we got dressed and headed out into the city at night to find some dinner. This was the night where we were on our own to go out to eat. This was a Thursday night in the city, and one of the things we found funny about Dublin was the sidewalks were fairly busy, but there didn't seem to be any organization of you should walk to the left side or you should walk toward the right side. So you're constantly weaving around people.
We can cross over now if you want.
This way?
Yeah.
You had to pay pretty close attention, especially as you got to some of the busier areas, that you didn't just walk into people. But we were heading toward the famous Temple Bar area, and even though we didn't go into Temple Bar because it was quite busy and possibly a bit of a tourist trap, we wanted to go to the older part of town, and we were looking for an Irish restaurant to have dinner at. One of the other things we noticed was that there were a lot of younger people out and about. A lot of them were going to the bars, but then it also seemed like there were a lot of younger travelers and just people going to work. There was a very young, active vibe to the city. For dinner on this night, we got two things that we wanted to try while we were in Ireland. Patrick got a steak and I got the Irish stew. But they're really not joking when they talk about meat and potatoes. There's the Temple Bar. I feel like we got to at least walk past it. Oh, we lost your dad. We walked past the temple bar, but confirmed that it was very busy and looked like mostly tourists, so we took some pictures and then kept going. We were heading back toward the hotel because we were definitely starting to get tired, but the city was beautiful at night. It was just a lot of work navigating the people and the traffic and the streetcars and all of that kind of stuff, but they do a very nice job decorating for the holidays. And we were right next to this famous sculpture, which is just like a giant spire. But we headed back to the hotel room to go to bed. And then we got up the next day to enjoy a good breakfast before a full day of exploring Dublin. Today is our last full day of the trip. Today's Friday. And it's our free day to walk around and explore Dublin. When we got here yesterday, we walked around and just kind of got the lay of the land and tried to figure out what we wanted to do today. And luckily it's another nice day. We've really been super lucky with the weather on this trip. But we're going to start with the Book of Kells because that's one of the big things in the city. And it gets busy later in the day. So we wanted to kind of cross that off the list first and then figure out where we want to go from there.
And with the Book of Kells, you can order everything online, your tickets, and have a reservation to make it speedier and easier for you. So we got a 10:30 reservation.
They recommended reservations because it does get busy. Everything that I read said that it gets busy later in the day. So we wanted to kind of take care of that first. Yesterday was a lot about just acclimating to being in the city. It's kind of overwhelming when you've been in the country for a while and then you come into all this activity and getting used to being in a rather fancy hotel. But we were so lucky to have this absolutely beautiful day to just walk around and see all the sights and the beautiful architecture of Dublin. Another neat thing about Dublin is that you hear so many different languages being spoken. There's a lot of people from other parts of Europe that come over to work and live in Dublin, and I totally understand why. It's such a neat city. Train. It seems like there's a very strong public transportation system in Dublin. A lot of these trains going by, lots of buses, and then you also have tons of people walking, scooters, e-bikes, a little bit of everything. But it makes the downtown area very accessible. I'm sure if you lived here, public transportation would be helpful to move around and get to work and all the different places around the city. We thought about going on one of the hop-on, hop-off tourist buses that you can find in the area, and it goes to all the major sites around the city, but we decided to walk instead just so that we could go at our own pace and stop when we wanted to look at something or take pictures. And we had been on this bus tour for quite a few days, and we had been definitely indulging in some vacation foods, so walking was a much needed source of exercise at this point. And I think by the end of the day, when we had made our way around the city, we walked something close to 7 miles. So definitely got our exercise on this last day. But since we knew we were going to be on a plane for pretty much most of the day tomorrow, we were just happy to be outside, getting fresh air and some exercise. We made our way onto the campus of Trinity College, which was founded in 1592, making it the oldest college in Ireland.
Oh, Professor.
There was some sort of a graduation ceremony going on, so we saw quite a few people walking around in their cap and gown. We made our way into the exhibit, and there's a room with some information about the illuminated texts and why the Book of Kells is so important and special. This area we were allowed to film, but when you go into the area with the actual book, you are not allowed to film. So I'll show you a picture of it instead. In this stock photo, you can see the actual book is kept in this dark, temperature-controlled room to keep it safe. The book itself is written on calf skin, and they turn the page once a day so that every page gets an even amount of exposure to the air and the light. So they're very serious about preservation here, and there's actually a person in that room watching you like a hawk to make sure that you don't take out a camera or do anything that you're not supposed to anywhere near the book. But as you come up the stairs from the Book of Kells, you're brought into the library, and this is one of the centerpieces of Trinity College. It is full of these old books, and there are people working in the rows to clean and preserve the books. You also have these important artifacts from Irish history. You can see pictures from what Ireland used to look like, different historical events, and they have the oldest harp in Ireland, which is the symbol of Ireland. After seeing the illuminated manuscript of the Book of Kells, we made our way back out to the streets of Dublin and continued walking around. We came up to this Christmas market, and it looked so neat, but the workers told us that it wasn't going to be opening until the next weekend. So I bet this would be really cool if you were in Ireland a little bit closer toward Christmas. You can see these European-style outdoor Christmas markets. But we were making our way across the city to the area with some of the cathedrals, and specifically we wanted to see St. Patrick's Cathedral. On our way through the city, we walked past the Christ Church Cathedral, which is an older and smaller cathedral, before walking a few more blocks toward St. Patrick's Cathedral. Just behind the cathedral is a beautiful park with a little cafe, so we were scoping out our options for lunch as we headed around to go into the cathedral. The entrance fee for the cathedral was €8 per adult, and that included the audio guide, which is on a little handheld device that they give you, very similar to what we did at the Giant's Causeway. I love these audio guides because you can move around at your own pace and you get to learn a lot more information, even if you're not really into reading all of the text and all of the informative boards that they put out. You can just listen as you walk around and learn more about all of the different things that you see inside the cathedral. I'm glad that we were able to see St. Patrick's Cathedral. Even if you are not going to Ireland for the purpose of seeing religious locations, they really emphasized on the audio guide the fact that they want people of all faiths or no faith to come and see the cathedral and to hear the message of peace that they are working on. Because Ireland is a place that has seen a lot of conflict, that is the central message that they want to convey. People from all over the world can come and see and enjoy all of the work that has gone into creating this spectacular cathedral, and most importantly, taking away that message of peace. St. Patrick's Cathedral is a large Gothic architecture cathedral. It was opened in 1191, and it has a height of 225 feet. It is the national cathedral of the Church of Ireland. St. Patrick's Cathedral has these beautiful large stained glass windows. You can see how the inside of this cathedral looks and feels very different compared to Down Cathedral. One of the notable things in St. Patrick's Cathedral is that Jonathan Swift is buried here. He's the author of Gulliver's Travels. When we were done walking around the cathedral, we went around the back to this nice park area, and they have a little cafe where we were able to grab lunch. It was fun to see the locals walking around. Some of the kids were on lunch, and they would come and walk over and have their lunch in the park. So you get these little glimpses into what it's like to be a local. After a quick lunch in the park, we slowly started to make our way back toward the hotel. This was our last night of the trip, our last night in Ireland, and we had a group event planned. We were going to be getting onto the bus and heading just a little bit outside of Dublin to a restaurant and banquet center. And the idea was that you get to listen to Irish music, see Irish dancing, and have a big meal with everybody for our last night together on this group trip.
Shells. Oh boy.
Oh dear Lord.
Imagine when he comes sweet home. About Silent Night.
Yeah, that is gorgeous.
I'm jamming today. Horses.
Oh, horse-drawn carriage, yeah.
Yeah, saw that.
It was Friday night, so Dublin was very busy. There were lots of people out walking around. There was quite a bit of traffic, so even though we weren't going that far outside of the city, it took quite a while to fight through the traffic. But we got to see some of the sites that we walked past during the day and see them at night with all of their Christmas decorations lit up.
It's a dinner show.
The venue that we were going to was up on the hill on the outskirts of Dublin, and it was located in a historic building. This was recently renovated, and the banquet hall is in this big open room where they host large groups. There were another group there from Australia, and you come for Irish night, which is all about Irish food, Irish music, and Irish dancing. So the full cultural experience.
I'm gonna borrow your soup. Thank you. Oh, yes. Action shot.
Patrick got the Irish stew, and I got the ham and turkey.
Do you have the pasta?
Yep.
Dessert was this very yummy apple tart, and of course dessert would not be complete in Ireland without an Irish coffee. The musicians and the dancers did a great job. We were quite far in the back corner, so we didn't have a great view of the stage, but they were doing some audience participation, which is not really our thing, so we were kind of happy that we were back in the corner. Of course, no trip to Ireland would be complete without getting to enjoy some Irish dancing. It's such a unique type of dancing, and especially if you remember the time when Lord of the Dance was really popular, it's fun to see this in person. This was a great way to cap off our last night in Ireland, but we weren't ready for the night to be over just yet. So when we got back to the hotel, we went to the pub just down the street, and we had such a fun time listening to live music and just enjoying the atmosphere. The pub scene is so much fun, very different from being at a bar in the US. It is 6:30 in the morning, Dublin time, and it's 1:30 in the morning at home, and we're getting ready to go, unfortunately. We just put our bags out to get loaded onto the bus, and we're getting ready to head down to have a very quick breakfast, back onto the bus and back to the airport. So the good news is that we'll get to see Redford today, but we're definitely sad that this trip is over. I think this was probably the most fun trip that we've been on, just because of the company that we have. This is a very fun group, and I do hope that we get to do this trip again, because they've been doing it yearly for like a really long time, 20 years or something. So hopefully we also get to make this a yearly thing, because I think there's a lot more for us to see in Ireland. Hopefully next year we get to see a little bit more of Southern Ireland, but it was really great to explore Ireland for the first time, and hopefully we get to come back soon.
We were sad to make our way back to the airport. This trip went entirely too quickly, but we were looking forward to going home and seeing Redford. Thank you so much for joining us on this trip to Ireland, our first international trip in quite a while. As we got ready to board the plane, Ireland had this grand finale for us, as there was a huge rainbow that spanned the entire airport. I couldn't have come up with anything more beautiful to end our trip in Ireland. Thank you so much to our subscribers and our Patreon members. Your support and encouragement is why we continue to make these videos. Thank you so much.
Well, you worried about you and me, the injustice, the next president to be, the news and what you hear, your career. It's time for you to face those fears, and it's all fair to be aware, and I'll be there, so don't be scared. Just take a deep breath of air, and 1, 2, 3 to 10, you begin to focus again, and no time flies.